Hey Adventures, so today is going to be my review of episode 7 of Rings of Power Season 2, and I wrote quite a few notes down on this one, and yeah, let's get into my thoughts on here so it doesn't take all night long. Alright, so opening scene, just utterly fantastic. I believe the opening sequence on this one was Celebrimbor and Anatar, Sauron. I'm pretty sure that was the opening sequence, and yeah, that's what it was, because then it goes out to the beginning of the battle in the Sack of Eregion, and the army, the orcs are all shooting catapults at Eregion, at the city, and then they turn the catapults and shoot them at the mountain. And I wrote, the mountain is conveniently held up by one little teeny rock, and that rock just happens to get. It's one of those things that is just unrealistic, and that takes you out of the show because they just didn't put the thought into it to make it make sense. If that's how it works, sure, but it was just so convenient in the way that it happened. I like Narvi. I really like how Narvi is being portrayed in the show. I like his personality. I love the fact that he comes to Durin and Disa and says, we're going to join you. And just like the way he stands up for what he knows is right, and the way that he can see the corruption of Durin the Third and all that kind of stuff. And it just works really good. Then we see Elrond and Durin, another scene with them finally. This is the first scene we've seen with them together since last season, and so it was really nice to see them together again and see that relationship and the relationship between them, and that they have, and the friendship that they hold with each other. It's just a really good scene. Then we're back at this city in the battle, and the elf says in Elvish, he says to loose, telling the archers to loose the arrows, but they've already been shooting. They don't need to be told again if they've already been shooting. That means they've already had the order given to them. They're not shooting in volleys. They're just shooting when they have arrows. So it just another one of those little details. And then I wrote that also the shooting choreography is atrocious. Why are they bouncing around between targets? So there's the one orc, or the one elf who's like, and it's just the way he does it. It's so clear that he is not looking at anything. It's so clear so obvious that he's not a trained archer, that he doesn't know what he's doing with archery, and two, that he's not even looking at anything. It's just he's just an actor on a stage at that point, and it's just so blatantly obvious. I like Celebrimbor figuring things out. I like him confronting Anatar and telling and seeing Anatar still trying to gaslight him and still trying to be like, yeah, but this isn't. I did this because no, you wouldn't have accepted me had I told you the truth, and all that kind of stuff. And just like Anatar still trying to manipulate, even once he's found out. And of course, part of that is Charlie Vickers' performance as Sauron, and he's doing a great job. That's the 100% believe that the performances in this season have been way better than in last season. The Celebrimbor and Anatar, specifically Sauron, those two characters' performances have been the highlights of the show in many ways. They're just fantastic. Poor Mirdania. It's such a brutal scene, and very fitting for Anatar, very fitting for Sauron, but very, very brutal. A cavalry charge that actually makes sense, and all the orcs all the elves are there on their horses. They blow the horn, they all ride up there, stop, and get ready to charge, and then they all charge at the orcs, and they're close enough that a cavalry charge makes sense. They're not halfway across the world like they were in season 1 when they did the cavalry charge. So good job on making cavalry charge that actually makes sense, but that leads to a very, very fast, like immediate halt from a full gallop. Horses can't just stop like humans can't just stop when they're running full speed. If you do, you fall over, or something doesn't work right, or you skid or something. You can't just come to a stop after going full speed. And so that was a little weird. I do like the elven armor. I think it doesn't look great on all the characters. At least the helmets don't. The helmet fits Robert Arameo's face really well. Elrond's face, and his face shape, his bone structure, but it does not fit is it Ben Walker? Is that the guy's name? That doesn't sound right. But the Gil-galad, it doesn't fit Gil-galad. His helmet looks really bad. But the actual armor itself, I like the armor. There's a conversation, I don't remember, I think it's when Elrond is in the, I don't know, tent or whatever, talking with Adar. And he, at one point, says Adar, the word Adar meaning father. The way he says it, there's an attitude to it. There's not an attitude, but like a subtext to the way that he's pronouncing that word while in the conversation with Adar. And he says something about, are you really willing to sacrifice your children, Adar, like father? If you're really their father, why are you so willing to sacrifice all of their lives? And just the subtext with the way that he said that word. Okay, Robert Aramayo's portrayal of Elrond in this season has been really good as well. Then I wrote, no, they do not have a relationship. I do know its reason, but still it's wrong. A forehead kiss would be much better and more fitting. And obviously I am referring to the Elrond and Galadriel scene. The most unnecessary kiss that has ever existed, and the most inappropriate. It should not happen. Maybe not the most inappropriate, but it's that absolutely within Tolkien's lore, that should not happen. That goes against Tolkien's lore in a way that is unacceptable. I understand why they did it from a story perspective, because they had to somehow take the attention off of what Elrond is doing and make the orcs not see that. And so I get why they did it, but that should not have been the way that they did it. It should have been, if they were going to do something like that, and a perfectly acceptable and even, in my opinion, a better way to do it, just like in all around a better way to do it, would have been for Elrond to kiss Galadriel on the forehead in a very friendly way, in a very you're gonna be my mother-in-law very soon type of way. Just all of that would have worked so much better with the story and with Tolkien's world and just with everything, and it would not have been so blatantly offensive. Like that was not good. I do not forgive them for that scene, even though I understand why they did it from a storytelling perspective. It should not have happened. Robert Aramayo as Elrond, the actor who plays Elrond, speaks very nice Elvish though. His pronunciation, he speaks it very easily. It just flows out of his mouth, like he's practiced it a lot, like he actually speaks the language, which sometimes the other elves don't sound quite like that. Aragorn in the movies obviously sounded like he did, because largely due to Viggo Mortensen's ability to speak so many different languages, and he just understands how to formulate words. And so when he would speak Elvish, he sounded like he was speaking Elvish. Sometimes the other actors don't quite sound that good with their Elvish, but Robert Aramayo did a very good job. It sounded very natural with him. And then he puts his helmet back on and it doesn't fit him anymore, and it's just so frustrating, because he just puts it on and it's his hair. Like his hair, I get it, but it just looks so bad. It looks like the helmet does not fit him. And yeah, I made a note, hey, dwarven women have goatees, because there's some of them that have a little bit of different types of facial hair. It's still not a beard. They need beards, but it's better. The female dwarven facial hair in this season is significantly better than the little teeny tiny wisps that they added. Disa has actual sideburns, still not a beard. These other dwarven women have goatees and stuff like that. That's better. It's not great, but it's better. Just go full out and give them beards, okay? Nobody's gonna care. In fact, people will be happy with you for doing that. And then I made note of this, and it's a thing that happens all the time in cinematic battle sequences, is when the character stops and mourns, and nothing else. Basically, the battle around them pauses, and they can just stop. And this instance, Elrond says goodbye to his horse, and I understand it. The elves and the horses have a strong connection. Any rider with their horse has a very strong connection, and I get it. I understand, but you were in the middle of a battle, you killed one orc, and there are however other many around you. That is no time to stop and say goodbye to your horse. I'm sorry. This, I will say though, it was much shorter than I have seen at other times. It was just a brief, he leaned down, said goodbye, and then got up and continued fighting. It wasn't some long drawn out thing like sometimes that I have seen in the middle of the battle. And so at least it wasn't too long, but still it seems really weird to me for somebody to just stop in the middle of the battle. And maybe they do. Maybe my conception of battles is different than what they really are. And I'm sure it is to some degree. But that just does not seem realistic to me at all. I get it, it's fantasy. It doesn't have to be realistic, but it kind of does. Then I wrote, why did she drop the brooch? Elrond he ruined the story just so that he could give her this brooch. And then Galadriel drops it on the ground. Why did she drop it on the ground? Why did she not keep it? It's like, there's just so frustrating because that's not the... She's not a smart character. She's supposed to be Galadriel, who is one of the wisest of elven characters. And she's so stupid sometimes. She makes the dumbest decisions, or is forgetful, or just doesn't think. Why would you drop this? It makes absolutely no sense. But then we do see her, and this, I have another issue with this. We see Galadriel talking to Arondir. And it's a very Galadriel conversation. It's a very good conversation between the Galadriel that we come to know in Lord of the Rings and character Arondir, who is grieving and who is struggling and has a lot of things going on in his life at this moment. And it's a very good conversation. I really appreciated what they did with that. But this leads to some of my other issues. So, two things about Arondir. First, he says he's here for him, meaning Adar. Arondir is an archer. He could literally snipe Adar from out in the woods and finish it right then and there. If the goal is to kill Adar, then he could do it so easily. He's an archer. He's a very good archer, as we've seen. Better archer than most of the other archers in Eregion. But he doesn't. He says, I'm here for Adar, but then he refuses to just do it. There's so many opportunities where he could just shoot Adar, and he doesn't. And so that's the one thing. Clearly he wasn't there for Adar if he hasn't already tried to kill Adar. But then the other thing, and I don't remember exactly what his promise was that he made to the Entwife, but him going and getting himself killed by trying to confront Adar in the middle of the camp by himself, that does not seem like he's fulfilling the promise, the vow that he made to this Entwife. And as an elf, he would understand the importance of vows. Vows in Tolkien's world, I have talked about this several times, vows in Tolkien's world are very important. And if you break your vow, that is worse than so many other things that you could possibly do. And he's not keeping his vow. At least it doesn't seem like he is keeping his vow in the way that he's going about this. It seems like he's seeking revenge, and not that he is trying to protect other trees from these destroyers, something like that. Anyways, I don't remember the exact promise that he made to the, Winterbeam? Something like that. I don't remember what the Entwife's name was. But still, just a little thing that is rather big within the realm of Tolkien's lore. Then we get, again, another sequence, Celebrimbor and Anatar, and Celebrimbor at this point knows that he's Sauron. And Sauron is still manipulating him, and still trying to manipulate him so much. And then Celebrimbor hits back with, "You truly are the great deceiver. You can deceive even yourself." First off, the great deceiver, that's a very biblical Christian imagery, once again, as we are seeing time and time again with Sauron, and as you should, as he is in many ways a Satan figure. But then just the way that he's like, you're deceiving even yourself if you think that torturing me is going to is any different than what Morgoth did to you. And just, it was a good line. once again, Celebrimbor is doing fantastic as an actor. The performance there. This is just a brutal episode, but we see Celebrimbor cut his finger off, his thumb off. Why did he not put the chain in the whatever cutter first? Why did he have to cut his finger off? It just, I mean, I get it. It's because it's him trying to say that he's, at this point, he's so broken, so destroyed that he's willing to do whatever to get free, in order to warn people, to fight back against Sauron and all that stuff. And I get it from that perspective. But why not try and cut the chain first? Like, you already tried beating the chain with a hammer. Why didn't you try just doing the one next step first? And it's just one of those little things that didn't actually affect anything, but it just came to my mind. And then we see Galadriel come in, and Galadriel is canonically like 7 foot tall or something like that. No, she's not. It's like 6'5". I don't remember what her height is, but she's really tall. And she comes in, and she's so short compared to all these other characters. And like, I get it. There's generally a height difference between males and females, but still, it's just so drastic. And I understand that it's really hard to find an actress who could portray Galadriel correctly while also being as tall as she's supposed to be, as well as the fact that characters like Elendil, who is 7'11", that seems really tall, something like that. But Elendil the Tall is his name. He's not that tall in the show, and that's fine. I'm not mad about that. They have to do what they have to do. But it was just funny seeing how short she is, knowing that she's supposed to be tall. Then we get a decent speech from Celebrimbor. Once again, he gives this speech about light and darkness, and how the darkness cannot be fought with might or something like that. It can only be fought with light. And just it's very, in many ways, Tolkienian. It's kind of taken from one of the conversations in one of the monologues or whatever from Lord of the Rings, where they're talking about how in the end the darkness will also pass away and the light will remain. It's just the what is it? It's just like a passing shadow or something like that. I forget where it's at. I forget who says it, because I think it's different between the books and the movies who says it, but that's all right. It's a good, relatively Tolkienian speech. Rhiann, the elven archer, female elven archer of Elrond's crew, that has been fighting with Elrond and traveling with Elrond and everything. She got a cool death. First off, this name Rhiann, I feel like I know it from the lore, and I don't know if it's an elf or if it's a different character. I want to say that Tuor's mother was named Rhiann, but I can't remember for certain. But it's probably just a Tolkienian name that they took and used, and that's fine. Names, I'm not mad about that at all. Then we get a force choke. It's not really force choke. It's a force immobilization or a telepathy type thing between Sauron and the elves, but it's almost very, very close to a force choke, for a Darth Vader force choke. Then we see, okay, so the orcs are talking with Adar, and he says, all right, we've just got to go attack. First off, they're mad because he just sent in Damrod, but they're talking, and the orc that's been kind of his lieutenant the whole time, he gets this look of, you're leading us to our deaths. You're not doing what is best for the orcs. And just this kind of conflict between the characters that is accurate, and is also shows you that these orcs are more than just cannon fodder, which so much of the time that's what they are, but they do have personalities to some degree, and they do have desires. And I'm not trying to rationalize or to defend the whole baby orc plotline, the orc family plotline, but I am saying that this orc is thinking. He has a brain. And it's nice to see, and it's nice to see the descent among the rings, and the fact that this orc does not like Adar. He's not just following, basically at this point he's following Adar because he hasn't made the decision to leave yet, but he's right there. And you could see how, with the way that Adar's treating the orcs, how the orcs would be like, we'd be better off under Sauron. And that's the idea that I'm getting from this performance. And then Damrod, the hill troll, I was just disappointed with that. Like, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. They were fighting in the day. I guess not quite. It was still technically night when they fought Damrod and killed him. But Damrod really didn't have very much to do. They really hyped him up in the marketing material, acted like he was going to be a huge important character, and he really wasn't. I mean, it was cool to see our three elves, without minus Galadriel, our other three elves fighting him, meaning Arondir and Elrond and Gil-galad. It was cool to see those three fighting. Gil-galad, that's one of my next notes. I don't know where it's at. Oh, maybe I just texted that to a friend. But Gil-galad has Aeglos, his spear, and it's great to see him fighting with a spear like a spearman, and just it was good. It was good to see, but also him and just the fight, seeing the three of them fight this hill troll. That was cool. It's just disappointing that Damrod had so little time to be awesome, or to be terrifying rather, before he just got killed. And I get it. It's sometimes that's how things have to work, but still. I wrote that Arondir death didn't quite land, though it is sad. It's sad that he died, presumably, but it didn't quite land or hit as hard as I was hoping it would. Besides the fact that it kind of ruined one of the promises that or is messing at least with the promise that he made to the Entwife. But beyond that, as a story, I'm liking Arondir's story in this season. And this episode really brought that to a head, and I was really liking what we were seeing, the rage, the despair, the grief in his performance, and I thought that was really good. One thing that I didn't like was when he hopped off the walls of Eregion and was just flying through the air, completely defying gravity. And I know it's elven stuff, but it just looked kind of bad. I mean, sure, he's done other things already, and Legolas in the movies did all sorts of stuff, but rarely did it visually look bad. It was still impressive to look at, and in terms of, like, it didn't look so unnatural. Even in the Hobbit movies, when when Legolas is climbing the fallen rocks, that was like, it still looks cool and it looks a little bit more natural. Whereas the way he just did this, it was so clear that he was on wires, and I didn't care for that. But anyways, it was good that he fought Adar. That's a good thing. I don't mind that Adar was the one who presumably killed him. I'm not actually sure if we saw him die in this episode, or if he was just wounded, and we'll see more about that in episode 8. I'm not positive. I just don't know. But it was some. Of course, it's sad because I'm starting to like his character, but at the same time, it didn't quite land as hard as I was hoping it would, and I don't know if that was just because, all right, the battle's been going on for so long, I'm just tired of it now. I want to move on to actually make some progress in some things, or maybe it was because I want to see Adar fight. He's an elf. I really want to see an elf fight an elf in a actual full-on battle, and we just haven't seen that yet. I don't know that we're going to get to, quite honestly. Although we'll get something similar, something somewhat like it in this next episode. Then I wrote, let's see, I'm not sure what I think of Adar getting the ring. It will definitely push Galadriel more to Lothlorien Galadriel, though, once she finds out about that, once all that stuff happens, once this next episode happens, I can see how that could push the character in the direction that she's supposed to go. Elrond's trust being broken by Durin really explains his reluctance to help dwarves in the future. I liked a lot of what that was implying, the way that it felt a little naive in terms of Elrond, but it was also, it worked with the story that they were telling, and it does explain, or help to explain, his reluctance to help the dwarves in the future, or to rely on the dwarves in the future rather. All right, so that's kind of my overall. Those are kind of my little thoughts. My overall thoughts. It was an engaging episode. You could have fun watching the episode the whole time. It was a big battle, and so that's kind of a lot of times that can be fun to watch. Sometimes it can just get boring, but for now it was enjoyable, even with all my little qualms with it. I still didn't mind the way that the battle played out. As an episode of like a fantasy TV show, I thought it was a fairly good episode. Again, it has some problems, but I thought it was like an 8.5 out of 10 or something like that. I don't think it's not quite a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. It's not nearly that good, but it's on the higher end in terms of a fantasy TV show, and so I appreciated that quite a bit. As an episode of Lord of the Rings, unfortunately, it's still fairly high. I wrote down that's like a 7 of 10. But I don't know that I can truly say that. I liked a lot of stuff that was going on with Annatar and Celebrimbor and all that kind of stuff. I liked a lot of that. The sack of Eregion, that's important. But at the same time, there are some major lore things like the Elrond and Galadriel moment, or even the fact that Sauron is not leading the armies to destroy Eregion, is kind of, but not really. He was the catalyst or the instrument for how it could happen, the influential in how it could happen, but he isn't directly leading the armies. And so in that way, it's not really lore accurate. So there's a few enough lore inconsistencies that I can't quite put it super high, but there's also some really good things done with the way that they do it, with the way that they're telling the story at least. Oh, I forgot to write it down, but I totally called it last episode that the mithril, the refined to a powder mithril, was totally not mithril, and that it was blood, Sauron's blood, and of course that happened to be the case. But that's a kind of, obviously it was predictable because I predicted it, but it works with the story that they're telling. So yeah, as an episode of Lord of the Rings, like between a 6 and a 7, I think. Just it's not perfectly lore accurate, and there's some major things that just I do not like at all. But for the most part, it was a fairly good episode overall, and definitely this season has been a much better season than season 1. Just on from a storytelling perspective, and from a fantasy TV show perspective, and even from a adaptation of something Tolkien perspective, it is better. Not perfect, but it's better. So yeah, I will leave it there. We will have our final episode next week, and we will, well, I guess by the time you're seeing this, it will be this week, but the final review will be next week, or it'll either be Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. I'm not sure, because I never know when I can get them filmed and edited and everything like that. But we will see when I actually get that final episode out, and we will see what my final thoughts are on the season at that point. Yeah, I think I want to try, if the other guys want to, I think I'd like to do another, just sit down and talk about the show with, I don't remember who I had last year. It was Renfail and Liam, and I think it was Chaz were the 3 guys that I had on. If there's other people that want to come on, or that I can think of that would be good to bring on, maybe I would. Not opposed to it for sure. I just have to find out who. But anyways, yes, that's enough rambling. This has been my review for Season 2, Episode 7 of The Rings of Power. We're rapidly approaching the end, just 1 episode left. We will see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching. Stay well.